Have you ever finished a phone call and felt completely exhausted? Like you've just run a marathon? Or maybe you've agreed to a plan you dreaded just because saying no felt too difficult, too confrontational, too selfish? You're not alone. This is the quiet burnout, the slow, simmering exhaustion that comes from constantly putting others' needs before your own. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a buildup of small yeses that chip away at your energy, your time, and even your sense of self. It's that feeling of being spread too thin, like a tiny bit of butter over way too much bread. You smile, you nod, you agree, but inside you're running on fumes. We tell ourselves it's being kind, being a good friend, a dedicated colleague, a supportive family member. But when does being good to others start being bad for ourselves? That's the question we're going to tackle today. We're going to talk about why setting boundaries feels so hard and how it might just be the most radical, powerful act of self-care you can practice. So, let's talk about the yes trap. It's a place we all find ourselves in. A friend asks for a favor when your schedule is already overflowing. A family member makes a casual comment that cuts deeper than they know. A colleague pushes a task onto your plate at 5 o'clock on a Friday. Your gut screams, no. But what comes out of your mouth? Sure, no problem. Why do we do this? For many of us, it's rooted in a deep-seated fear of conflict or disapproval. We're afraid of being seen as difficult, unhelpful, or selfish. We've been conditioned to believe that agreeableness is a virtue and that putting our needs first is a vice. This creates an internal battle every single time. Your mind knows you're at your limit, but your desire to be liked or to keep the peace overrules your own well-being. This is where the emotional toll really starts to mount. You might feel a surge of resentment, not just towards the person asking, but towards yourself for not speaking up. That resentment then often gives way to guilt. You feel guilty for feeling resentful, creating a vicious cycle of negative emotions. It's exhausting, isn't it? You end up carrying the weight of their request and the weight of your own unspoken needs. This is the emotional peak, the moment you realize something has to change, because you can keep living in this state of quiet, compromise, and internal conflict. Your energy is a finite resource, and giving it away without replenishing it will eventually lead to a total system shutdown. Now, what if I told you that saying no isn't selfish? What if it's actually an act of respect? This is the core of the resolution: reframing boundaries. A boundary isn't a wall you build to shut people out. It's a line you draw to define where you end and another person begins. It's a clear communication of what you need to be healthy, happy, and present. Think of it this way. When you say no to something you don't have the capacity for, you're actually saying yes to your own well-being. You are saying yes to your mental health, yes to your peace, and yes to having the energy for the people and things that truly matter to you. This is the radical act of self-respect. It's radical because it goes against so much of what we're taught about self-sacrifice. And it's an act of respect not only for yourself, but for the other person as well. When you set a clear boundary, you're being honest. You are teaching them how to treat you. You are giving them the opportunity to interact with the real, authentic you, not the resentful, burned out version. A relationship built on honest boundaries is far stronger and healthier than one built on reluctant yeses. So, how do we start? It begins with small, manageable steps. You don't have to go from being a chronic people pleaser to a boundary setting expert overnight. Start with low stakes situations. Practice saying, "Let me check my calendar and get back to you." This simple phrase is powerful. It buys you time. It breaks the immediate pressure to say yes and gives you a moment to genuinely consider if you have the time and energy to commit. It puts you back in the driver's seat. Another gentle approach is the positive sandwich. You start with a positive statement. State your boundary clearly but kindly, and end with another positive or an alternative. For example, if a friend asks you to help them move on a day you've set aside for rest, you could say, "I'm so excited for your new place. Unfortunately, I can't help on Saturday, as I've already committed that time to rest and recharge, but I would love to bring over a housewarming gift next week." See, you're not just saying no, you're affirming the relationship while honoring your own needs. It feels different, doesn't it? It's not about rejection, it's about redirection. Every time you successfully set a small boundary, you build confidence. You prove to yourself that the world doesn't end, people don't abandon you, and you actually feel better, lighter even. Let's talk about those draining relationships. We all have them. The friend who only calls to complain, the family member who constantly criticizes, or the colleague who thrives on drama. These relationships can feel like emotional black holes, sucking the energy right out of you. Setting boundaries here is absolutely crucial, but it can also be the most challenging. The key is to be clear, consistent, and calm. You are not responsible for managing their reaction to your boundary. Let me repeat that. You are not responsible for their reaction. Your responsibility is to state your needs respectfully. For example, with a friend who is constantly negative, you could say, "I care about you, and I'm here for you, but I only have the emotional capacity to talk about this for about 10 more minutes. Then I'd love to shift the conversation to something more positive." This sets a time limit and a topic boundary. With a critical family member, you might say, "I know you mean well, but comments about my career choices are off limits. I'd love to talk about something else." It might feel uncomfortable at first. They might push back, but consistency is everything. When they see you won't budge, they will eventually learn to respect the line you've drawn. This isn't about ending relationships, but about redefining them so they can be sustainable for you. It's about protecting your peace and ensuring that your relationships are sources of support, not sources of stress. Remember, you deserve relationships that lift you up, not weigh you down. Finally, let's connect all of this back to the big picture: your life, your time, your energy, your focus. These are the most valuable currencies you have. Every time you say yes to something that drains you, you're spending that currency on something that doesn't offer a return. Setting boundaries is the ultimate form of personal finance for your soul. It's about making conscious, intentional decisions about where you invest your precious resources. When you start protecting your time and energy, something amazing happens. You suddenly have more of it for the things that light you up. You have more creativity for your hobbies, more patience for your loved ones, and more enthusiasm for your goals. You stop living in a state of reaction, constantly responding to the demands of others, and you start living in a state of intention, proactively building the life you want. Setting boundaries isn't a one-time fix. It's an ongoing practice, a daily commitment to yourself. It's choosing self-respect over self-sacrifice. It's understanding that your well-being is not a luxury. It is the very foundation upon which a happy, fulfilling life is built. It is the most radical, loving, and necessary act of self-care. So, I encourage you to start today. Identify one small area where you can set a boundary. Maybe it's turning off your work phone after 6 p.m. Maybe it's telling a friend you need a quiet night in. Whatever it is, take that step. Notice how it feels. It might be scary, but I promise, the feeling of empowerment on the other side is worth it. You deserve to protect your energy. You deserve to honor your needs. You deserve to live a life that is undictated by the quiet burnout of 1,000 small compromises. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this message resonated with you, please give this video a like and consider subscribing for more content on living a more intentional and empowered life. Drop a comment below and share one small boundary you're going to set this week. Let's support each other in this journey. I'll see you in the next one.